Hey Eden, so I'm going to walk you through this refined concepts presentation. So basically today I'm going to show you two different options that are refined versions of the concept that you chose from the last round. So today I'm going to be looking a little bit more into the color palette, typography, and showing you some mock-ups just to kind of help you visualize how each version could work as a full brand and how all of these elements can work together. Again, the brand goal statement and the adjectives are at the beginning to help keep those fresh in your mind. So let's talk about concept number 1 first. So on the first page, you'll see the primary logo, then 2 secondary logos, and then sort of the meaning behind that. So let me kind of go through that first. So with this one, like you said, you wanted it to feel a little more elevated, maybe elongated a little bit. And I think overall just feel a little bit more maybe sophisticated is the right word to use. So that's what I tried to do here. I tried to just kind of change the font that we were using for the main logo and make that feel more polished and sophisticated. So a couple of things that I've done here with the font. So it is more, it's a bit wider, which kind of, let me go back here, also goes along with the secondary font that we're using there. But some little details that I added in just to kind of keep that meaning that we were going for is I, like in the last concept, how I was sort of exaggerating some of the curves in some of the letters just to make it feel a bit more friendly, a little less formal. So I've done that again here with the S and with the D, which those were the same letters that I was customizing in the last round. But here we have the N also has this beautiful curve in it. And it just kind of adds a little bit of femininity to it. But yeah, also making it feel a bit more fluid, more friendly. So that's what we're doing here. And the secondary logo, this one is set up pretty much exactly the same as it was before because you loved having the Charleston, South Carolina in it. And then for this one, I wanted to go kind of a different route with the mini mark. Rather than just doing a monogram, I wanted to try and do some kind of stamp mark because I feel like this concept, this font, it feels very classic and traditional, which of course is a style that you often work in and something that a lot of your clients are looking for with their weddings. So I wanted to create something that really kind of highlighted that style, that Southern traditional type of feel. So it feels kind of like a vintage stamp, but we're using the font that we're using up here. But I just wanted to like present your name and everything in a slightly different way. So let me know what you think about that. But again, we're using the circular shape to kind of mimic these little circles here, and then also how we're trying to exaggerate the curves and everything. We're kind of keeping that as a theme. So here you can kind of read, all of that stuff that I just explained. So then with color, you mentioned you loved neutrals, but you liked kind of muted greens or like hunter greens, light blues. So that's what I wanted to do for the first color palette. It's kind of, I took a lot of inspiration from so many of the photos that are on your website have this gorgeous Spanish moss in there. So I really wanted to take some inspiration from that. So the greens, that's where that comes from. And then I wanted to add in some blues. One, I feel like a lot of your weddings that you do are near water, but also blue is just kind of this calming, like tranquil color. So since you feel like that's a big part of your approach, that's what lots of your clients said, that you created such a calming, safe space for them to just relax. I thought that that would also be a good color to tie in there. So this is just an example to show the colors and the logo elements working together next to a photo of your work. And then here's some examples for typography or fonts that you can use for your content. So this one, it's very classic and it feels sophisticated, but it has some personality. This font specifically, I think that it complements your logo because it's also using lots of exaggerated curves in it as well. And it definitely makes a statement. The letters are very thin, but it feels like a bold font. But it doesn't feel too formal or too stuck up or anything. It's still friendly in its own way. And here you'll probably have to zoom in a little bit to see, but this is just an idea of how these could work together on some print collateral if you're going to send like a welcome card or something to someone. Again, I showed this in the creative direction, but I love the idea of having like a transparent paper wrapper or something where you could put something in gold foil or just something to add some more texture and just a little extra layer to add to a print piece like this. But you can see that font working here. We're using those little elements that are on the secondary logo. You can also use them around a big tagline or intro statement. But yeah, that kind of gives you a good idea of how those could work together. And then these are some ideas for social media. So this would be if you were sharing something on your story, if you wanted to highlight a wedding, how you could layer images over each other. And this is another example. If you wanted to post something, you could have this be one of the like sliding posts where people could swipe through and see different images. But here it shows where the logo's on top and then the couple's name and their date below. But yeah. Oh, and also it shows how that stamp mark could be used for a profile picture as well. So that was concept number 1. So now let's talk about number 2. So the examples that you sent me, I actually recognized what font a lot of them were using. And that one I felt, I played around with using that font a little bit, but it felt a little bit trendy. I've seen quite a few designers actually using that because I think it sort of just got popular. But parts of it, I don't know, there were elements that I didn't feel were totally working. But I actually found this font, which is actually from the same font designer. So it is a little bit similar to the examples that you sent me, but it's a little bit different. And I felt like it was a good balance. It had that really nice contrast with the thick lines and the thin lines. Feels very elegant, very polished, but I think it had a little bit more classic feel than the example that you sent me. So I decided to go with that. So let me know what you think about that. But it is from the same designer. So of course it kind of feels like a sister font to the other one. So anyways, that's the primary logo and then the secondary logo. And then for this one, I did use a monogram. And for this one, I loved this idea. I think in the last presentation, I had this where there was just a single oval around the E. But for this one, I decided to do a double oval, which kind of is like 2 wedding rings, is what that's supposed to represent. So I love that, subtle little meaningful detail. But with this font, again, it feels kind of more stylish than, let's go back to concept number 1. A little bit more stylish than concept number 1, a little more elevated and refined. Maybe I do think it feels more, it's not quite as approachable because it does feel so stylish and kind of high end, but it has little quirks in it that ground it a little bit, especially on the N, how that kind of breaks the mold there. The G, I think, is very playful feeling. So there are elements of it that do still keep it approachable. But yeah, I think since everything is set up sort of the same way, it's just really this font that's switched out. Hopefully you kind of understand all the other meanings behind it. So then for the color palette for this one, I want to do something that was more neutral, a little more simple. And especially since I love all of the black and white photos. I know you're not taking the photos, but I love that there are so many black and white photos in your feed and everything. So I wanted to come up with something that sort of complemented that. And a lot of the venues that you use have lots of whites and blacks, and then, some more natural browns or something. So I wanted to kind of play off of that. So I did still add a little bit of green because, again, there's so much beautiful greenery and that Spanish moss in a lot of the weddings that you work on. So I knew that I felt like that had to be in there. So again, an example of how these could work together. This one also has gold as a more prominent color. So that automatically just makes it feel a little more elevated as well. Then for the fonts and the typography here, it's a very timeless, very simple. I did use a sans serif for the body copy here that just kind of feels a little bit more modern, but having this, and especially italicizing like words that need to be emphasized here, just kind of gives it that extra contrast. Then an example of how this could be used for a print piece, so you can see how those fonts look working together. And then that same layout for social media stuff, but using those other colors and fonts as well. So you can kind of see how just switching out the colors and the fonts can give a totally different feeling, and especially how that logo feels next to everything. So that's what I have for you. So let me know if you have any questions or anything, if you need me to explain something more. But other than that, you can give your feedback through the link that's right here. And if you want to schedule a call to talk about it, because I know we're at like sort of a final point where we're really making decisions on everything. If you want to schedule a call to talk through it, that's totally fine as well. And just a quick tip, because since these options are using sort of the same layout, it's really just the font that we're kind of nailing down here. What I would suggest that you do, this PDF, it's size to be 8.5 by 11 so that you can print it out. And I would suggest printing out this page and this page. If you want to print out the other ones, you can, but I would suggest printing out both concepts and hanging them up on the wall somewhere, and then just kind of taking a step back and looking at them from different distances. That's kind of a trick to just figure out which one feels better. It helps your eye to see it from a different distance, and then you can kind of see the shapes of the letters and kind of the overall logo in sort of just from a different perspective. So if you're having trouble like deciding, that might be something that helps, and you can kind of see which one your eye naturally gravitates towards if they're hung up on the wall. So hopefully that helps. But yeah, again, let me know if you have questions before you give your feedback, and I'm very, very excited to hear your thoughts.